Hello everybody, my name is Shanth Enjeti and welcome to a midday painting stream, something I don't do a lot of. I am currently working on some artwork for book 2 of my Shanth Enjeti art book series, the Trek series as I like to call it. The first book is Autonomous Treks, and this book is called Rigor More Treks. So more rigor and hopefully more treks. It was backed and funded on Indiegogo recently, and the link to the Indiegogo, if you still want to back the project before the book goes to press, is in the description. So this piece I'm working on right here, I'm trying to get some of the detailing done and get the color theory fixed. The place I'm working on right now, funny enough, is not in frame, so I'm just going to zoom. I love this new rig that I have for the camera. It works really well. It's really nice. But I'm working on this lower bit right here. And the thing I'm trying to do with the piece is bring in a little bit more complementary color work and a little bit more of a vivid quality to it. So we'll see how that goes. And if you've already backed the book, thank you so much for doing so. I do appreciate it. The work is coming along great, and we're almost there. I'm just trying to make sure I get all those details in there that I know you guys expect to see. And I want it to be as good as you guys deserve. There we go. Just mixing colors on my palette. I may even try to move the camera over so that at some point my palette's a little bit more visible. There we go. There we go. Mixing up a darker color right now, a blue and a black that I think is going to work really nicely with the complementary color theory I'm trying to set up here on this piece. This piece was inspired by, like so much of the stuff that I do, it was inspired by the Universal horror movies and the old school kind of silent pictures and the work of the 1930s and 40s. I just think the character design is really interesting, and I think the whole horror genre, the aesthetics of the horror genre, is something that really speaks to me. So I try to honor it by doing my own sort of takes on these characters and bringing a little bit of whimsy and fun that I like to do in my work. I hope everybody's having a good day, and if you're on the East Coast, I hope you're either getting out to the beach or getting away from the heat any way you can, because it is a pretty warm day today. There we go. Hopefully this will lighten your day a little bit, bring some entertainment to you if you enjoy watching people paint. Last stream I was talking about a show that I've been watching recently that is absolutely outstanding. The show is called Kingdom. It's produced it's shown on Netflix, but it's from South Korea, and it is one of the most amazing, beautiful shows on television if you're into horror and zombies and feudal era Korea. It's an incredible show for me. I love that show. And I'm looking forward to whether he likes it or not is fine by me. I always love to hear his opinions on things. One of my favorite YouTubers, The Choice Voice, who is just a really fun and interesting guy in terms of his reviews. He's a filmmaker, does all this incredible work, and I am a patron, so I support his Patreon, and which may be obvious to some of you, but for those of you who are not in the know, like myself, it's great because I get to see a lot of exclusive content from Michael and the Choice Voice, and I get to suggest things for him to review. So one of the things that I decided I wanted to do was see if he would review the pilot episode of Kingdom. And Michael, being Michael, who's so motivated and passionate about story, was like, I can't review this just watching, one episode. Got to watch more than one episode. So he started watching the whole first season, and he sent me a message on Facebook and mentioned to me that he, at that point, I'm sure he maybe even got further. He was up to episode 5, and I'm really, really interested to just hear his thoughts, because that's one of the things that's so fun and so great about, old school fan culture, which was, it was all about having different opinions and talking about things. It was all about, we share the things that we love, and, one of the things that I've found is you could have the most serious argument with somebody about the aesthetics or the virtues of a particular work, and at the same time, and be on the opposite side of a discussion or a debate with a fellow fan, and you might both walk away with your minds kind of changed and meeting somewhere in, the middle in some instances, or you at least might get the other person's point of view. And I think that's the approach that I tend to take with art, and I tend to take with cinema. I don't share things with people because, in terms of work that I like, with an expectation that other people have to like them, or I'm trying to sell them on it, and if they don't like it, then I just can't live with it. My attitude is, I'm sharing it because I'm interested in, I'm interested in seeing their take on it. If I want to know what my take is on it, I already have that. There's no need to do it. And that's kind of the interesting thing. And it's not because, on the other end of that spectrum, it's not about trying to make sure, like, oh, you only have an opinion if you disagree with me either, because I always find that, playing devil's advocate and disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing isn't the mark of having your own thoughts. It's the ability to be surprised by the work, watch the work, and enjoy it, and look at things with fresh eyes, or look at things you wouldn't normally think to pick up. And that's the whole point of this, fan culture, and what it certainly was, when I was coming up, which is, there's so many things that YouTubers I follow and am interested in talk about that I don't even watch, and that I might get around to at some point, but it's not my focus of what I do. And I was listening to a bunch of different people. I was listening to, Gary from Nerderotic, who is located out in San Francisco, about a show called Doctor Who. And then Michael from The Choice Voice was talking about Doctor Who and what a fan he is. And to my shame, I have never seen a single episode of Doctor Who. And the last stream, I was talking with some folks who follow the channel and were commenting about Brandon Lee and the movie The Crow and the Crow soundtrack that came out, and what fans we were of that. But we were all coming at it from different directions, and that's what I find interesting about YouTube, is getting to just see different people and their perspectives. And I think that when we see people coming together in terms of, and I don't mean coming together in agreement, I mean coming together with interest and in good faith, you get this really invigorating cultural experience. And I think it's something that we could all benefit from. I think most people benefit from it, without a doubt. You have to, you have to bring something to the table to share, and that's what makes all this stuff great. And a perfect example of that is my brother, Arvin Bautista, whose channel is Comics Rant, and I follow that channel. It's a great channel. I think I have a link to it in one of my streams a couple streams ago. I think it's about 2 streams ago. And Arvin was sharing his artwork, and another one of my brothers named Nick Janeshake, who's an artist and illustrator, and has worked on everything. He does landscape paintings, concept art, you name it, he's done it. He teaches, he's an incredible guy. And they were kind of introduced by me when Arvin started his YouTube channel. And Nick backed and bought a copy of Arvin's creator-owned book, The Bomb Squad, which is just an awesome, you know, if you like Kirby, if you like action, if you like, gosh, I'm trying to think of what I would compare it to, you know, kind of has this classic animated look. It's like Batman the animated series meets, frankly, you know, my childhood and Jack Kirby and all of that great stuff. And so Nick saw the work, liked it, and he ordered the books. And it was really cool because I got to watch, you know, Arvin's talking about Nick's work and Nick talking about Arvin's work. So it's a really cool thing. And I think that's the thing that is great about having artist friends and people who actually make work and actually produce work to look at and things to talk about, is when we critique things, we do it with an understanding of how much is involved in making work. And anyone is always welcome to have an opinion, but I think when I'm looking at, you know, Michael's The Choice Voice reviews, I contextualize within it his understanding of cinema and the fact that he himself is a director, you know, making films inspired by Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, which I love, and Star Trek. So it's always worth a look. It's always worth a conversation, and I hope for as long as it can be, I hope that YouTube is a open platform for people to bring different things to the table. That's a big factor in it, and that's what I love about the folks I follow and what they talk about. It makes the world a less boring place, and I think that's pretty much what inspires, you know, the aesthetic principles and the aesthetic approach. One of the things I was talking about on the phone with a friend of mine was this confusion that people have about what an aesthetic work is and what aesthetics are. And it's because they don't ever think about what the opposite of aesthetic is, which is anesthetic, something that puts you to sleep, something that bores you, something that lectures you, something that is tedious, or something that you just have no understanding of what is just put in front of you and it just lands with a thud. And so a lot of what interests me these days is bringing back that sensibility, that artwork is there to kind of inspire you, and that's what I'm working on every time I do a book, is work that's designed to inspire at the very least somebody. And it's never done with the attitude of you're going to have to trudge through this thing. I want it to be beautiful color, beautiful drawing, and I want to put my heart and soul into the production of it, and that's what makes it fun, and that's what my favorite artists do. I love hearing somebody talk passionately about something they like that I know nothing about. That's the best for me. That's what makes it fun. Okay, so let's see here. I think I've got those lines in there, and let me see what else I can do here. Just realizing that's pretty far off. So what I may do is I think I'm going to zoom in a bit. Let's do that. Let's see what that does. Let's see if I can do that here. Let's move this over here. And what part of this do I need to work on? Is the next question. Let me adjust my light here. Let's go and move this up. And there we go. That's getting there. Okay. Now I see if I can see anything with the reflection where it is. Hang on a minute. Let's see here. That's a little better. There we go. Let's see how that works for you guys. There we go. Let's see. There. I think I'm going to have to do a anthology, or not an anthology work, a bunch of short stories, but I think it's very early to be talking about it, but I think that my next book is going to have maybe a few more sequential pages in it. I don't know if it's going to go full story, but I think I've been building to that lately. I don't know. I've loved comics ever since I started doing my artwork, and I know how hard it is, and I know how hard it is, at least for me. I think some people are born to be able to do it, and they're very quick at it, and they're able to work as fast as they think, but it is a very grueling process. But with the painting, and as I do more of this illustration work, I'm starting to consider ways in which I might be able to bring that to my stuff, so we'll see. These pages that are in Rigor Mortrix, I'm really proud of. They're pseudo-sequential artwork that I haven't quite figured out what it is yet, but they seem to be the start of something. We'll see what that something is. See if I can turn the music down a little bit here. There we go. That's a little better. There we go. All right. So now that I've got that, and I've got that, okay, I think that page is starting to come together. I think I can see that character a little bit better now. I'm going to try to do one more thing with the robe. And I'll try and mind the chat if any of you guys have questions. I'll try to pay attention to it, obviously. And I will, thank goodness I can paint and talk at the same time. Hope everybody's having a pleasant Monday and hanging in there. So this piece is inspired by a lot of pieces in this book by Nosferatu. I love that film. I had the pleasure of going and seeing Nosferatu in a theater in downtown Providence, Rhode Island, where an amazing group of musicians who had composed work and accompaniment for that film that was a little bit more modern, but absolutely a perfect fit to it. They were there live performing to it, and I wasn't sure what that would involve when my wife got me tickets to go and see it. She's like, I've got a surprise for you. We're going to go here and we're going to see this. I thought, wow, that's amazing. But I didn't know what it was going to be. I thought, are they going to be working off of the classical score and doing that? And when I heard it was something that they had composed, I was a little bit nervous because I'm a big fan of it, and there's no way I could, it could go a lot of different ways. And I have to tell you, to say I was pleasantly surprised is putting it mildly. I was blown away. And whenever I watch the film, I always want to watch it with that soundtrack. It's just amazing. Excellent. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. And I cannot wait to get the second book to you guys because it is really looking great. It's really shaping up. And that first copy of the book is very, very rare. It is, the first printing will be done and dusted after we send out the copies that everybody bought with the last campaign, books 1 and 2. So I'm so glad that, that you're going to have both copies of the book, because the first one was the start of something special, and I think that this one is the next step. It's definitely good enough to follow the first book, which was my big concern. I was like, I want it to be a step up. I want it to be a stronger work. So I'm thrilled with how it's been coming out. I can't wait for you to see some of the pieces that are going to be in that book. You've probably got glimpses of them, but the finishes are crazy. They're going to be really good to see. So, and thanks for coming by and visiting. Appreciate it. Glad to have you guys in the chat and watching. It's always fun. You see where I am. I want to be painting off frame here. There we go. There we are. Is that starting to move a bit? Oh, yeah, it is. That's funny. See if I can get this to work here. Hang on a sec. There we go. Let's see if that holds. Yeah, that looks like it's holding. All right. Here we go. I'm just putting a little bit more value in on, let me see if I can move this a little bit. In on that vampire bat that's up there. You can see that sheen is where the paint still got a little bit of drying to do. I want to put a little bit more detail into the wings right there with this brush. There we go. Just trying to get that delicate taper and that delicate feather onto that line. I think it's most important when I'm moving out of a mark. So if you see me doing something, actually let me get really close and see if I can do that without getting in the way of my hand. There we go. That's a lot closer. So here's what I'm talking about. Let me see. There we go. So it's moving into a line, bringing it through, and then when you get to that last little bit right there, just allowing yourself to kind of follow through and get that nice little edge right there for those sharp points as they come off. And that's the stuff for me that makes it the art of brush work, and certainly with brush detailing, the art form that it is. It's taken me a long time to get the hand control I need to do things like this. And to be honest, I really couldn't do the work. Not just, I mean, honestly, the thing that's the most inspiring about doing the work are the fans and the backers and the supporters and my customers. I mean, that's, my wife and I feel very fortunate to have customers who are so supportive of my work, and certainly in your case, backing both books, book 1 and 2. That's what's really amazing to us. We never thought that would be the case when we started this work. And the other aspect of it is the artists and creators who inspire me with their work, because a lot of times when I'm working, you know, and I'm you know, up late at night, it's cinema, other YouTubers, other artists working that keeps me going. There we go. I think that's coming together a little bit. Let's see. There we go. Let's see if I can move that over just a bit. There we go. That's a little bit. Is it moving again? Oh, there it goes. Did I get that to work? There we go. There's the detail. Okay. And it's still trying to run. Love this. All right, let's zoom out and give it a little less work to do. There we are. Okay. All right. So here's the full page. Here's where we are in terms of this work. And this is a part of the story that is, this image is what started the story. So it started with the image that you're seeing. So I can move that out. It started with the image that you're seeing right here. So that's distracting. Move that back behind it. The image that you're seeing right here, and then it transitioned into a very short, one-page, simple, so to speak, vampire story. And that's the thing that I've been working on. So right now I've got one of the Collinson twins I'm using as a model for from the movie Twins of Evil by Hammer Horror Films. And it's an R-rated horror film, so if you are a minor, get your parents' permission to not watch it. and but it's a horror movie, and I wanted to get the look of the Hammer horror sets from that film. So little things like the detailing on this bed, everything that you're seeing right there is influenced by that. So I'm going to take this a warm wash right now, which I was holding off on doing, and I hope it's not a disaster, but we'll see, and just make that furniture have a little bit of a color tint, a little warm, so that it feels more like wood in shadow and less like just the blue that I'm using everywhere else. And I'll bring that down into Miss Collinson's hair right there. I believe, and I forget if it's Madeline or not, I think it might be Madeline, but one of the twin sisters passed away a couple of years ago, and they just had these kind of great faces and great looks in that film, even though their voices were dubbed because they were both Maltese and they spoke English, but they didn't speak it well enough for what I think the film needed. But they had this really great look, and they were able to talk about this very interesting, complicated idea, which was the idea of the witch hunter and sort of puritanical authority figures who are trying to control society, and then a villainous vampire who has sold his soul to the devil, as one would do in a Hammer horror film. And because you have these twin sisters, one who kind of gets seduced by the vampire culture and the other one who's trying to be good, the title Twins of Evil is not about the two twins, although that's what their uncle, Uncle Gustav, who is the Puritan leader, refers to them as. That, why has he sent me these twins of evil at one point in the film? But the actual twins of evil are the vampire who is a decadent lord of that region, a nobleman of that region, and the character played by Peter Cushing, who is the sort of puritanical morality police of his town. And so that's the thing I always thought was cool about the movie, was the double meaning of Twins of Evil, and how it's used in the film versus what you're meant to understand about it. So they even, as much as Hammer horror films have a reputation, I should say, of being sort of schlocky, light-hearted, fun fare, the honest truth of it is there's a lot more thought in those films, because in many instances they had some really solid writers who knew how to put a script together, and some wonderful people working behind the scenes. And when you add to that having actors like Christopher Lee, who a lot of people know as Saruman from the Lord of the Rings films, and as Count Dooku from the Star Wars films Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and then Peter Cushing, who everybody who knows Star Wars films knows as Governor Tarkin. He was digitally resurrected recently in Rogue One. These were famous, iconic actors who played characters in movies like The Hound of the Baskervilles, the Hammer production, and many other films. That's a pretty impressive legacy. And in fact, it was George Lucas's own love of the Hammer horror films that led to both Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee and countless other actors who were in those movies who were alumni of Hammer Productions. So that always gets me excited when I think about Hammer horror films, because they didn't have these tremendously large budgets, and they really were a great kind of indie film scene in a lot of ways. And I would like to, and they just had no fear of anything. There was real freedom in the making of that work. Nobody was worried about saying the wrong thing and everything. And maybe there was an element of that in how they wrote and portrayed Christopher Lee's character, who is this Puritan who wants everybody to be censored and wants everybody to be quiet and wants everybody to just get in line and wants to root out what he believes is this very present, which, to be fair, he was right. There was definitely a vampire. He wants to root out this evil and destroy it. Now, the problem is that he doesn't know what real evil is from what he just perceives as being evil, which is people who don't, adhere to what his morality is. And that's kind of one of those things that if you cast the wrong person for it, if you cast somebody who can't act and doesn't bring nuance to it, to me it doesn't work. And Peter Cushing, what makes his work in that film so interesting is you actually can see kind of the pain and his own confusion and his own struggles with faith, because he just is gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? He's driven by such a dogmatic and ideologically strict and rigid belief system that he's as much a prisoner of his ideals as anyone else is. And you could just get this feeling for him, particularly when he's confronted towards the end by his wife, who was an actress who, in a film called, I can't pronounce it correctly. I think it's Black Narcissus, but I could be wrong. I always pronounce that word wrong. But the thing about it that gets me is that as she confronts him and says, look what you almost did. You almost burned, this innocent person. And you can see on his face, like his whole world's falling apart. And I think that's one of the aspects of art and metaphor that's so important. When people talk about the end of the world, in a lot of ways, and when you see artists doing that, in a lot of ways, it's so useful because it's a metaphor. And sometimes that metaphor, what makes it great and what makes it interesting, is that it's about how sometimes we can have a very limited worldview that we're passionate about, but we need that limited worldview because it makes us less afraid of how complicated things are. And the only problem with that is when that worldview collapses, it's incredibly painful. And you can see Peter Cushing's character just struggling to maintain his belief system as it's challenged by actual evil. And he has to kind of, reconcile that, he's correct in that one area. But the fact that he's correct is almost like a broken clock being right twice a day. He just happens to be correct in this particular instance, and that fuels his certainty. But it isn't until the end when he's wrong and he doubts himself, there's almost this confrontation with the fact that he's turned off this faucet to emotion that lets him destroy the lives of innocent women that he believes are witches, that he believes are sinful. And he destroys these people. And the problem with that is that he is raging against his own humanity. He's raging against his own weaknesses instead of confronting them and processing them and taking accountability for them. He is simply annihilating those weaknesses in other people. And that's a real amazing story to be exploring in these films, and I'm very very inspired by it. See, that's a little part right there where the paint just did something unexpected for me. It got this little bit of blue, and I was going to wipe it out with the brush. I had this plan that I was going to wipe that out, and once I saw it, I go, nope, that's supposed to stay. And if there's one thing that is the goal for me anyway of art, when you're teaching it and also when you're trying to develop your own work, it's the ability to stop when happenstance presents you with something that's better than what you intended. That's what I love about this whole process. So it's taken me a long time to not just obliterate a section of a painting when it's doing something interesting, because it's not what I intended to go there. And this is something that, the texture on this surface, it doesn't need to be uniform. It doesn't need to be so, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It doesn't need to be such a, I don't want to say predictable. I think it's more to do with methodical application of paint. It doesn't need to be such a methodical approach. I mean, it might be clean, everything might be in its place, but it can also be emotionally dead as a work. And I wasn't sure if I was going to put contrast in to this piece or put any warms. That's just something that I did on this stream. That's just something that as I was looking at it, came to me, I'm going to try that. And the amazing thing for me about that whole process is I'm going to try to leave it alone now. So, wish me luck. But I am so happy with how that just came out. Everything about that little section. I don't know how many people who get this book and how many people who are supporting this campaign and are going to be able to put their noses to it, or future books, if this is included in a future book, will notice that little section. But for those of you watching this video right now, you will have had your attention drawn to it. And that's the thing that is so fun about this, so fun about the process, is that little bit right there is like a little poem of color and composition. And I am going to leave it alone and just frame back in this face so that I can delineate the middle background from the far background, hopefully without flattening out the image with that dark edge on the bed. I feel like it needs to be there, so I'm not going to make it a lighter value. And that's probably a little bit of my compromising with the linguistics of comics. I don't necessarily know if I want a comic book to be a painting. Sometimes I want it to feel like a cartoon drawing. Sometimes I want it to feel like it is what it is. It's not, I don't want to nuance it to death, which I'm so close to doing. It's so hard to restrain, but I'm going to have to, because I just changed something right there that makes the values a little off. So let's see if this works. I'm going to put a little highlight in there. There we go. If I do any more, I'm going to kill it. So I got to leave it alone. But just needed a little bit more of a value. So I'm going to leave that area alone and put just a little bit more here. There we go. That's it. There. Now as that stuff fades, hopefully it'll keep people able to cascade down into this figure, because when someone comes down into a panel, if you look at the way it's composed, let me move this up a little bit, or let me try to. There we go. When you look at the way, gosh, I have to tighten that again. There we go. When you look at the way that is composed right there, that page, I'm just going to watch it do its thing and rotate. But when you look at the way that composition is working, you're starting out in this panel right here, and this vampire, this Nosferatu, is casting a shadow across the bed. And I think that's a little hard to read right now because I think I got too dark right there. Way too dark. I'm going to probably make that a little bit bluer. And so that you have this angle, hopefully, what I'm doing with that dark value is I'm pulling you away from where you need to go. But I want that shadow to come down across this figure into this space right here, and then you come down, you see the figure, and then, you feel this character lurking in the frame. And that's the goal. And that's the problem with comics. No matter how many times I try to quit comics, every time I get pulled right back in, because I love storytelling so much. And my first love is comics. And I think that only when my painting ability got to the point that it's at right now, did I start to have new kind of dreams of that art form of sequential storytelling, because I watch horror movies and I can't help but think what kind of aesthetics I could use to tackle the horror genre with my painting ability right now. So here you see me bringing a little bit more blue into here, and that starts to keep the shadow on the bed, and it's close enough to what I need to have going across this image. Now the next step I want to try, and we'll see if this works. Might be a little too much. Is I want to take this highlight right here as it comes into the shadow and just kind of touch up that shadow just a little bit so that it's softer, and you feel that sense of the shadow hitting the wall and going past the figure. And I think what it needs is a little bit more contrast on that candle that's in the foreground. Now, I don't need anyone to notice that candle, so if you're looking at that first panel and thinking to yourself, I don't really see a candle there, don't worry about it. It's not the subject matter of the piece, and you're not meant to, but it's just a little highlight on a foreground element right there. And by putting that highlight on there, it just moves everything that that candle's attached to. It moves it into the foreground. And it's interesting because that's one of the things that was really important to me when I was being educated in making artwork, that those are very nuanced conversations. Those are conversations that are about refining your skill and figuring out what your work is going to be about. See if that stays. I think it's staying. That's figuring out what your work is going to be about, and they're not these conversations about, what is the meaning of, is, or what is the meaning of, what would life be like to me if I was a tomato, is the best way I could think to put it. That stuff is about, so if you've got a light that's coming in from this side, why should it be there for storytelling reasons? And that's the stuff that I received from my mentor, Brian Stelfreeze, and that's the stuff that I try to pass on to my students. How do you actually make work? You have something to say. I don't care to tell you what to say, but I care to help you learn how to say it. And that's the big difference between teaching somebody a methodology versus an ideology, and giving somebody an education versus giving somebody an ideology. Telling somebody what to think versus telling somebody and teaching somebody how to think is not my bag. And at the same time, something that I can't overstate is that when you're learning, at least for me anyway, it was so important for my mentors to be strong in what they thought. My mentors were not asking me what I thought about storytelling and, what are your thoughts, Shanth? Because their attitude was, rightfully so, I knew nothing. So they were there to train me in how they approached things. But they were also, it's a very difficult and strange line to walk. Really strange line to walk. But they were there to kind of say to me, this is my way, this is how I figured things out, and these are the things in my stylistic that apply to almost all work, composition, or all work of this particular nature. So when you're looking at the stuff that I'm doing right here, and you're looking at the work, a big thing I want you to bear in mind is there are certain fundamentals on which I'm resting this entire process on. And that's the stuff that I like to teach, and that's the stuff that's worth passing on. And so it's not my style in many instances that people see that makes this work compelling, makes this work interesting. It is maybe what makes the work something that somebody notices, this type of work over another. See if I can bring that light a little bit closer. See how that works. There we go. That's working nicely. But it's the difference between work that's competent and readable and work that is not. And so that's what my whole focus is and what my whole interest is when I'm doing this work. How do I bring that focus to it, and how do I bring that technical ability and that passion? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break for a little bit, and I may come back to the stream or start a new stream. But thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for liking this video and joining me today. And my name is Shanth Enjeti. This is Shanth Enjeti Art. Link in the description to Art Book 2, Shanth Enjeti Art, Rigor Mortrex. Like and subscribe when you see this video. And take care and peace. We'll see you guys soon.